What is going on, guys? Xeris here, and we are back with another Patreon requested video. Today we are going to be talking about globalism. What exactly is globalism? I mean, people use the word a lot, but I mean, I don't really understand the concept very well. Interesting. It's actually a pretty good question. Lucky for us, I have my cell phone, so let me just Google that right now. Here it is. Boom. Wi-Fi slow. Anyway, so the definition of globalism is the operation or planning of economy and foreign policy on a global basis. And I think that's pretty succinct enough. I mean, even though the definition that we found on Google is pretty simplistic in its own right, globalism is actually a pretty complex issue that isn't really that simple to discuss. So today I'm just kind of going to go over some general ideas revolving around globalism and, you know, maybe why it is or isn't a good idea. Even though I guess, put it bluntly, I'm not really a globalist. Okay. So basically, globalism is just different countries buying and trading items between each other. It actually seems pretty simple enough. And I would have to imagine that if our economy is going to be globalized, then that would mean that we'd have the ability to trade between each other pretty freely, right? Wouldn't that just be easier to just say free trade? Right? I mean, how many people would really have a gigantic problem with free trade? I don't really think a lot of people would have a gigantic problem or issue with the whole easier trading route between getting objects between one part of the country to another country entirely. I do think that that's probably one really huge benefit that would come from a global economy. And to be fair, we actually already are operating mostly on a globalized economy anyway. And not entirely globalized in the sense that we all have the same currency or anything like that, but we certainly are trading goods and even work from other countries, which is for better or for worse, I suppose. Actually, it's pretty for worse if you're working class American. Well, what does that mean? Well, one of the biggest reasons why people are totally against globalization is specifically that fact right there. A lot of companies or a lot of really wealthy people, you know, who own businesses or who are in industry in creating goods usually outsource jobs to other countries where they can get cheaper labor and they can get obviously a higher profit return because they don't have to pay the workers all that much. Usually in these other countries they don't, you know, have the same rights that we Americans have. So because of that aspect alone, a lot of people don't like the fact that jobs are being outsourced in the other countries because it means that there's less work for us Americans. And also I think more just from a pride thing too. I mean, for most nationalistic people, they have a lot of pride and really like their countries. And if they're not actually producing their own goods, I mean, now again, like I said, one of the biggest factors is you lose jobs and you lose industry, but another thing is you have to rely on the work of another country somewhere else, and I mean, that's not really something to be proud of, honestly. But the thing about globalists, or people who are globalists, is they don't really care too much about national pride because they care more about their bottom line and the money that they make, and so they don't really care about the fact that the working class people don't have the jobs or aren't able to produce the things they have, or they're forced to pay these working class people the right wages they are because they can just go outsource it. So yeah, that's one gigantic problem with globalism that a lot of nationalists find. Actually, I can completely understand that. However, if we are having cheaper labor, then wouldn't that mean we'd also be having cheaper items too? That might be true, but cheaper doesn't necessarily mean better. Yeah, I guess that is true. But that's only one really simple and basic reason why a lot of people don't like globalism. And as far as I understand it, probably one of the most common reasons too. But there's a cultural issue that really happens with globalism that a lot of people aren't really big fans of. And that's the fact that whenever you import or whenever you have the idea of having open borders or have this idea that there should be no borders and countries should just allow, you know, people to come in as they please and that the world is one big nation, you're going to have an inevitable clash of cultures or a clash of ideals between people. Yeah, but I thought you liked learning about new cultures and experiencing different thoughts and ideas between different people. So wouldn't open borders actually be like a really good thing? You'd have a whole bunch of different cultures, a whole bunch of different people that you could learn different things from. And you could actually end up living in a pretty good society with different people with different ideas working together. Well, yeah, it's only a good thing if people actually want to live together and work together and they actually have a healthy respect for each other. But if these people don't, if these people have a fundamental disdain for the culture that they're trying to come into, they're probably going to try to usurp it or try to change it in some particular way, sometimes violently. I think if you look at what's going on in Europe currently right now with the refugee crisis, that is a perfectly good example of globalism not working out too well, at least on the cultural aspect of it all. I mean, again, you have a clash of cultures of two people who fundamentally dislike each other and hate each other, and it just causes a great degree of chaos. So sure, I think one thing that could be possible if people in general wanted to learn more about other cultures and had a desire to learn more about other cultures, it would actually be a good thing. But whenever there's a culture or there's a group of people with a fundamental disdain of you, there is nothing good that can come from having open borders, because they're just going to try to come in and either conquer you or, just try to conquer you or leave if you fight them back, one or the other. I don't know, you seem pretty negative. I mean, you mean to tell me that there isn't anything good that could possibly come from globalism or globalization? Well, there are a couple of good things about globalization. I mean, the mere fact that we are able to talk to and communicate with other people from different countries is a really positive thing, and it is really good. I actually don't think that there's any real problem with, having people be connected with each other in different worlds. However, do I think a one-world government, which would eventually have to come about if they're trying to create a one-world currency that could work all together, which is actually more of a conspiracy theory, but a conspiracy theory I could actually kind of see weight into. That's something I'll probably have to cover in the future. However, if the goal of globalization is to eventually connect all these nations together, one of the biggest problems I would ultimately find is, well, who's going to have all the control and power? Globalization is a great thing for people that are already wealthy and already want to expand their businesses and get cheap labor, and people who are totally fine with bringing in more people that can work for them. But for individuals who have to compete with them for these jobs, there's nothing really good that comes out of it. Again, especially when the cultures are inherently, antagonistic towards one another, I think is probably one of the best words to use there. So one of the good things that could come from globalism, or that does come from globalism, is the fact that people are able to talk to and learn about other cultures, which is something that really is more effective of the internet, or indicative of the internet. However, I guess I'm repeating myself here, when those cultures clash, then nothing good ever comes from something like that. Well, that's all interesting, and I actually had a thought while you were talking. I mean, if globalization is something that is occurring and that is happening, and businesses are outsourcing their labor, then I guess this seems pretty obvious, but wouldn't we be then creating other jobs in different countries? And wouldn't that be giving them the ability, or at least some kind of foothold, to start developing on their own and actually become their own industrialized area as well? Yeah, that's true. We would be creating jobs in other countries, which is, you're right, it is a bit obvious. But like I said earlier, considering the fact that these are in third world or developing countries, they don't have the same rights that we Americans have, which means they're not really going to be paid or compensated very well for the labor that they provide. And I think that is pretty terrible. Or shitty. I was going to say shitty, but I didn't want to use a curse word. Yeah, but wouldn't we then be able to have access to different products from different countries and different areas? I think that would be a pretty good thing, right? Yeah, I do think that would be true, ideally. I mean, ideally it would be great to be able to have access to all these different products from different countries all over the world, but that's only if globalism works perfectly, and that's only if these objects still aren't made cheaply or made at the lowest price point in order to be able to create high profit margins for really, really wealthy multinational corporations. I mean, again, I think the idea almost is more, in its novelty, a great thing, that we're able to buy products and obtain objects from different areas of the world. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon, and I do think it is awesome. However, do I think that we have to sacrifice our own industry here in America, or other countries have to sacrifice their own industries in order to outsource them to poor nations? No, I certainly don't think that outweighs the pro rather than the con. Because, I mean, alternatively, you could just have people within your own nations develop the objects there, and you wouldn't have to rely on different nations in order to create those things. Alternatively, of course. But then again, there's those pesky, rights and minimum wages and labors that multinational corporations probably aren't big fans of. Yeah. But even then, that kind of goes back to one of my earlier questions. Like, even if it's true that all these jobs are being outsourced, or it's true that there's a lot of cheaper labor and all of that, wouldn't we still be at least, but the multinational corporations at least still be laying down some kind of foundation for these less developed countries to at least start becoming industrialized. Yeah, but that's never going to happen if these people are constantly being exploited and constantly being taken advantage of. Well, at least from my limited understanding, it doesn't really sound like globalism by itself is really a terrible thing. It's just kind of the way that it's currently being applied. And I actually do understand why people would rather be nationalistic. I mean, considering why not create your own products and sell them to your own people, right? And if you like your culture, and I completely understand why you wouldn't want it to be invaded and changed. I mean, I get that, but even still, just from what I understand it, globalization doesn't sound inherently just terrible and bad. And that's the truth about a lot of things. A lot of things are very seldomly ever bad within themselves, but it's usually the people who are in control of them or the people who have the highest stake and the most power. That is the real issue here. I mean, like I said, I really do like learning about other cultures, and I really do like the idea of having other people, like if there was a one world, government, or there was no borders anywhere, it would be nice to go around and travel and all have one type of currency. But my biggest problem is the individuals who would be in control of all these different things. Because, I mean, in America, we have obviously certain rights and a constitution that guarantees us different protections. And a world government, I don't really know if it would adopt that type of government or that type of system of checks and balances. And America's government is pretty corrupt now, so even the checks and balances aren't working very well. So if a nation in America is not working very well currently right now, I don't really think expanding that area would make anything better, considering the fact that humans are humans and they're fallible. I don't really think that it would be very wise to give a great degree of power to the hands of a few small people in a one world government, which what globalization would ultimately have to lead up to. I mean, if these people are talking about opening the borders and letting in different countries or different cultures come in and mix, I don't really see what other end game these people could be going for. But then I guess that's more conspiracy talk that I'll have to go into probably sometime in the future. All in all, like I said, most things aren't in and of themselves a bad thing, but I think the thing that bothers me the most about globalism is how it's currently being used in use today. I think the way that globalism is currently being practiced, outsourcing jobs into lower economic stations, not actually allowing them to develop, but more taking advantage of them. And I think the influx of trying to bring in different cultures that inherently don't like each other is not helpful to anything. I think free trade sounds like a certainly great idea, and it'd be nice if we didn't have to pay all these tariffs and taxes on exporting and importing things. However, I don't think that that would be worth it all when it all comes down to, again, the clash of cultures and the insane way these multinational corporations, exploit and treat these people in these different countries. But this video here is just a more generalized overview of globalism. It's a lot more complex, and me and Zarias have laid it out here, and I really encourage you as a viewer to go put some time into researching this topic on your own. There are people who are much more knowledgeable than I am and really understand this. But most people that I've listened to about globalism really don't like it all that much. So I think it's really important to try to get a balanced outlook of globalization and globalism. Because for me, obviously, you can tell I'm not really a big fan of the way it's currently practiced, but I mean, I'm just not inherently against ideas in and of themselves either. So I guess I'm kind of in the middle ground. If that bothers people, then you're just going to have to be mad. So that being said, man, I certainly hope I made the person who requested this video happy. And if I did, and if I made you happy, viewer, please, by all means, go ahead and click the like button. Yeah, shoot, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.